No Jimmy Butler, no Kyle Lowry for Tuesday's Game 5 with a chance for the Miami Heat to close out the series versus the Atlanta Hawks on the line. It took a collective effort from everyone in the starting lineup, including Victor Oladipo and throughout the rest of the roster. And while it came down to the wire, the Heat held on for a 97-94 victory. Heat in 5, baby, and moving on, awaiting their next opponent. We break down the game on today's playoff edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Heat. Your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening on YouTube, on Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. I forgot what day of the week it was.
Does that count as giddy? Does that count as giddy, David?
I'm reveling in the fact that Miami was able to eliminate the Atlanta Hawks. Let's go through it. Game 5 got off to a bad start. The Heat were already missing starting point guard Kyle Lowry due to a hamstring injury. For his second straight game, he was out of the lineup. And just hours before tip-off, the team announces that Jimmy Butler would be out of the lineup as well due to knee soreness. Butler, of course, has been sensational all series, and the Heat would have to find a way to make up for his 30 points per game. And Victor Oladipo got the call, starting in place of Jimmy, providing an immediate impact. But Miami's offense was still really sluggish, particularly from three-point range. They missed their first 8 three-point attempts. The Hawks took a 6-point lead midway through the second quarter until the Heat, led by Max Strus, kicked off a 17-2 run to close out the first half and take a double-digit lead of their own. Miami kept control of the game, even with the Hawks nipping at their heels, especially with DeAndre Hunter scoring 18 points in the fourth quarter, filling in for Bogdan Bogdanovic as the big scorer because Trae Young had once again been locked down by Miami's defense to help cut down a lead that was once 15 points down to just 2. But P.J. Tucker, stepping up big once again, drew an offensive foul on Hunter, fouling him out of the game after a missed shot by Miami. The Hawks held on to had one last chance to tie it with 5 seconds left in the game. But Miami's swarming defense was simply too much for the outclassed Hawks to handle, forcing a turnover as time ran out. And the Heat close out this series with a 97-94 win. Wes, we talked on yesterday's show how Miami's versatility and depth. Oh, you want to go ahead and play it? Let's play it, baby.
Let's play it.
This is audio from the game as Miami is wrapping up the Game 5 victory there. Of course, that is the anthem for the season.
Yeah, the Pepas. That's about 20 seconds, right? So we can't get hit with the copyright. So we're
there
good. Great atmosphere at FTX Arena tonight, David. Absolutely just awesome atmosphere. Crowd was totally into it.
Yep.
Like, this was one of those games where it felt like the crowd contributed, right? Like, you hear this all the time about like a 12th man or whatever, like in football or whatever. And that was the sixth man tonight, right, for the NBA game. And there was just points in that fourth quarter, like you were talking about, when the Hawks would kind of just come back a little bit and the crowd would give them a good chant, would kind of get really involved. And they were into it, right? And they were really into it. And I thought they gave the players a needed boost here and there. And it was a really good recap by you there, but I kind of want to zoom out and talk about this series in general because what the Miami Heat did to the Atlanta Hawks, and I understand that the Hawks were an 8th seed and they were disappointing after coming off of the Eastern Conference Finals run last year, right? They were not supposed to be an 8th seed, but they were. They needed to play in games to get into the playoffs in the first place. But this was also, the number one offense in the league in the half court during the regular season. Trae Young, by any measure, was an all-NBA guard, one of the best 6 guards in the NBA, one of the best scorers in the NBA, one of the best playmakers in the NBA, an absolute force, a top 10 offense walking by himself, right? That is Trae Young. Awesome season. Best season of his young career so far. But what the Heat did to him and to this Hawks vaunted offense, it needs to be taken really seriously. It needs to be taken seriously. I know that the Atlanta is easy to score on, and that's why they're not a good team. They stink. But that's because of how bad they are defensively. Offensively, they're supposed to be able to score 115 points a game, right? And then they give up 125. But they couldn't score anything. They couldn't score a lick. 94 points tonight, 86 points in the previous game 4. David, like the Heat got better. The Heat's defense got better as the series went on. Trae Young didn't figure out more things. Who's one of the best problem solvers in the NBA? Trae Young is.
Yeah.
Didn't solve anything. Got more flustered, more frustrated as the series went on, to the point tonight where he was probably the most visibly frustrated we've seen him all series. This Heat defense, what they did to Atlanta's half-court offense, all right? Here's just some numbers to back it up. During the regular season, this is according to Cleaning the Glass, the Hawks averaged 101.1 points per 100 half-court plays, okay? In the playoffs against the Heat in those 5 games, 91.8 points per 100 half-court plays, okay? That's the Heat holding the Hawks, the number 1 rated half-court offense in the league, to something to what would have ranked 25th in the NBA out of 30 teams, sandwiched right between the Knicks and the Trailblazers, all right? The Knicks, who stink, and the Trailblazers, who were playing a G League roster for most of the season. All right, that's what the Heat did to this Hawks offense. It was like watching the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was trying to come up with a comparison, and that was the best one I can come up with. I just remember the Bucs that year they won the Super Bowl that year with Brad Johnson as their quarterback, because they had Simeon Rice, Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, just all these dudes who were just shutting offenses down, taking the ball away whenever they wanted to, whenever they pleased, frustrating opposing offenses. Got to the point in the Super Bowl where they completely just destroyed like the Oakland Raiders when they had Rich Gannon and Jerry Rice and all these guys, and they were just like, no, you don't. Like, this number 1 rated offense in the NFL doesn't matter. You guys stink today, and we're going to win the Super Bowl with this defense. That's what the Heat did to the Hawks. It just reminded me of those 2002 Tampa Bay Bucks. The Hawks just couldn't score on Miami, and that's what mattered at the end of this game 5. Like you said, very fitting that this game was sealed with a trapping Gallinari on a double team in the corner, and then him throwing the ball away, and Bam coming up with the steal at the end of the game to seal this win and seal the series. Very fitting way to end it. And it's time to take this Heat defense very seriously and not underplay it the way I think a lot of people are going to.
I am just like, I don't want to look past the Philadelphia 76ers, nor on the other side of the bracket can the Boston Celtics afford to look past Milwaukee, who's likely to dispose of the Chicago Bulls. But I, for one, would love to be able to see this Heat team match up against that Celtics team, because I am so sick of hearing about Marcus fucking Smart and Jason Tatum and fucking the whole goddamn Boston defense and Bill fucking Simmons and all that. I am so sick of hearing about Boston and how great their defense is and how great they've been. Fuck them. They shut down Kevin Durant and the goddamn Nets, who were a fucking mess, and we're so sick and tired of each other by the end of the season. This Hawks team wanted something to prove. They had a little bit more life to them, a little bit more energy. And guess what? Miami, that doghouse, the fucking defense shut them down. Without Jimmy Butler, without Kyle Lowry, 2 of the best defenders in the NBA, they absolutely put a clamps down on this Hawks team all season long, all series long. Just absolutely just humiliated them. It made Trae Young look like a frustrated 23-year-old crybaby out there. They just absolutely ruined his career, I think. This is the kind of thing that it's going to take years for him to be able to shed this kind of.
I'm so glad you bring this up, because the Trae Young part of this is so interesting. So I've got another stat for you and then one more point, but I'll give you the stats first. Trae Young, 22 made field goals in the entire series.
Yeah.
30 turnovers.
Yeah.
In the series. He had more turnovers than made field goals. Trae Young did. All right. Here's the list of players who have made more field goals in the playoffs so far. Okay. Just a few names. Not the whole list, but a few names. Precious Achiuwa.
No, for sure.
Brandon Clark. Will Barton. Ooh. Marcus Smart. Defensive player of the year. No offense. Marcus Smart has been a better offensive player than Trae Young.
I mean, he got
Dorian Finney-Smith came into tonight with 21 made field goals, which was one more than Trae Young. By the time that series is over, Dorian Finney-Smith of the Dallas Mavericks, for those of you who don't know who he is, will end up having more made field goals than Trae Young in the playoffs. That's crazy, okay? That's crazy what the Heat have done to Trae Young. They didn't just, like, we have this, it's become almost a cliche, right? Where you say, you can't stop the league's best scorers. You can just hope to make it difficult for them, right? That's
Right.
the line you hear all the time about whatever top scorer, Trae Young to Kevin Durant, you name it. They stopped Trae Young. They just flat out took one of the best scorers, one of the best playmakers in the NBA, who I said on yesterday's show, I have actually more respect for him after the series based on just what he's just gone through. Like he's got PTSD from this series. It's just unbelievable what they did to this guy over 5 games. He was having a great season. This isn't Jimmy Butler shooting 19% in the playoffs, broken and limping into a postseason with like 70 days in between the most exhausting playoff run ever, finals run ever, and an injury-plagued season. Like, that's not what this is. Trae Young was fresh. He was young, coming off of the high of winning the play-in tournament, going to be on the All-NBA team. Like, and this is what they did to him. All right? Yeah. You mentioned that Trae Young's never going to get over this. I actually could see this. This is going to be funny. Like, if Trae Young goes on to like win a finals or something, or like an MVP like years from now or whenever, right? If that ever happens, hypothetically, we're going to look back on this series as sort of Trae Young's like Jordan versus Pistons type thing. Like, this will be how like the legend was born, and Trae Young going into the offseason. I can already tell we're going to read stories about this next year from Atlanta media, right? Where they're going to be like, Trae Young, after that series against the Heat, he vowed to himself he would never let that happen to him again. And he got into the weight room and added, 15 pounds of muscle, and all this stuff. Like,
he's no Tyler Herro.
Please just mark this day down. I promise you we will be reading those stories at the beginning of next season. I promise you.
I was just thinking about this, and I don't want to turn this into Locked On Hawks and Brad Rowland, who does a fantastic job covering that team, etc. But at the same time, like, what's the next step for Trae Young? Like, what can he do differently? Because he's not going to get any bigger. He's not going to get any stronger.
Get better teammates. I mean, DeAndre Hunter that was an awesome performance from DeAndre Hunter tonight, right? Like, no doubt about it. Like, if he can build on that, okay, now you've got a big wing that you could play next to Trae Young, but they have a really interesting roster stuff that Brad Rowland and I did talk about in our crossover kind of in the middle of the series after game 2, I think it was. And he had some great thoughts on that, but I don't know that there's.
I'm glad you didn't jinx it with your call of the sweep there. Also, by the way, I'm glad it worked out. But of course, it was going
to. There for a minute.
You know what? Miami's team is just that good. Well, we'll talk about who deserves credit for tonight's Game 5 win in the next segment. Before we do that, just want to talk a little bit about a new sponsor of the show, Shady Rays, an independent sunglass company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' insane protection program. Shady Rays includes loss erosion protection on every pair. That's my cat, by the way. That will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. They're backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. And on top of that, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusive for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use the code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season, 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses.
Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game throughout the playoffs by our panel of local experts. It's free. It's available wherever you get your podcast. David. You know what time it is. It's time for some credit cookies.
All right, man.
We're open up the box. I don't know where to begin with this. All right. So I want to do credit cookies for the series. All right. Again, tonight was great. I want to do credit cookies for the entire series because I'm that generous and I got that many cookies to give out. I've got 50 cookies to give out.
50 cookies?
50. 10 cookies per game. Wow. Series went to 5. I got 50 cookies. You tell me what kind of cookies they're going to be.
Well, I was basing it off of Game 5. My cat seems to disagree with your choice there. But either way, I went with the assorted box of cookies because that's what tonight's performance was in Game 5. It was an assortment of all the Heat players. This was a franchise win, a team win with lots of players stepping up from Victor Oladipo to Max Strus to Gabe Vincent, Bam Adebayo, everybody stepping up, contributing. So it's an assortment.
Right.
I went with the Pepperidge Farm Classic Cookie Collection. I actually
What is your favorite Pepperidge Farm? I'm with you. That's a great with the blue tin, right? That's a blue tin.
No, there is a blue tin box. That's like the classic one. Like everybody's grandma had that, and you could probably get
That's
that.
what I'm thinking.
This was with the Pepperidge Farm. They have the Chessman cookies. They've got the Milano cookies.
Yeah. So what's your favorite? What's your favorite here?
I like the Milano dark chocolate Milano cookies.
Yeah,
pretty
good. They have like a double stuffed Milano cookie now.
Damn. I'm not a cookie guy, so I did not know that. But thank you for. Maybe we'll make that our next one after they whoop up on Philadelphia.
Maybe or Toronto. I have no idea what's going to happen in that series. All right, let's start with the Milano cookies from the Pepperidge Farm variety pack here. We're going to start with Jimmy Butler. I know he didn't play tonight, but again, this is I'm zooming out. I'm looking at the whole series. We've got 50 of these babies to give out, so I'm going to give 20 of these to Jimmy Butler. All right,
deserves 20,
right? At least 20. But we got so many cookies that we need to give out. So Jimmy Butler gets 20 of them. I don't need to discuss anymore why. I mean, 30 points a game, unbelievable scoring. We're getting the report this afternoon that he's not going to be available for Game 5, which to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, was that a flex by the Miami Heat? I am not doubting that Jimmy Butler has an injury that they want to keep an eye on and be a little preventative here, right? Better safe than sorry, be cautious. But had this been the Sixers or the Celtics or the Bucks, Jimmy Butler plays that game, right? That they knew they could beat the Hawks without Jimmy Butler. So just wanted to point that out. He's getting 20 of these cookies. We've talked about Jimmy Butler all series long. I'm going right to Bam Adebayo. I'm going to give him 10 cookies.
Okay.
It was not a coincidence that he had his best game in the series when Jimmy Butler and both Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry were not in the game. Bam Adebayo, who we discussed, needed to step up from a scoring standpoint, specifically after the Game 3 loss. We got on the show and said we need more. We need more from Bam Adebayo. But what he's done defensively and what he did offensively tonight was awesome. Exactly what we're talking about. And he filled in those gaps that were left by Jimmy and Kyle. But what he's done defensively all series long, we have not given that enough credit. Eric Spoelstra going out of his way in the post-game presser today to say that the defense is great and all these great superlatives and all that stuff. And then at the very end goes, I thought Bam was just tremendous. Completely unprompted. Nobody asked him about Bam. Somebody was going to. I was planning on it if he didn't bring it up, but he did. I thought Bam was just tremendous. And he was. The steal at the end. And tonight, David, it felt like every time the Hawks, specifically in that third quarter, were going to make a push or a run, Bam came up with a play, like a block or just a great rotation and a stop or swiping the ball away and a steal and whatever it was. Yeah. He was phenomenal tonight and all series long. It was a big reason why the Heat were able to basically neuter Atlanta's offense.
Several times throughout my notes, it's just Bam, exclamation, more energized. They had something to prove. I could have sworn Bam just it seemed like just giving an extra effort there, and it was a phenomenal performance from him. 7 of 11 from the floor, 20 points for him. Big night offensively, but just his overall effort throughout the series has been phenomenal. Even coming back from health and safety protocols, making an impact, finding a way to alter the series in his own unique, inimitable way.
I'm giving 10 credit cookies to Victor Oladipo. 10 of them.
We got 10 left. This is 40 out of 50 so far. I'm sure you'll have an extra stash somewhere.
I'm doing this segment too long. Plus 35 in 59 minutes over 2 games. Let me read that again. The Heat outscored the Hawks by 35 points in Victor Oladipo's 59 minutes over just 2 games. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Victor Oladipo is back to being an all-NBA player because I don't think he's quite there yet. But Bam Adebayo said he looked like Indiana Victor Oladipo after the game. I wouldn't go so far as to say that either. But he looks really good, doesn't he, David? Like, he looks really good. And I thought that some of the plus-minus stuff in the last game, in Game 4, little smoke and mirrors, a lot of noise in those numbers. Miami as a unit was playing really well, and it just sort of happened to coincide with Oladipo's minutes. But tonight, even though his plus-minus wasn't like whatever it was, like plus 24 or 36 or whatever it was in Game 4, tonight it was like a plus 7. Yeah. I actually thought his game was better tonight than it was in game 4. He just makes things happen. He forces stuff to happen. And that is such a skill. It's like it's an overlooked skill in the NBA. You need players who disrupt on defense, who make things happen on offense, who can create shots for them and their teammates. His driving in this game was so important, where it wasn't necessarily him getting the assist all the time, but he would drive. Atlanta's defense would have to rotate and scramble. He would kick out and then hockey assist, and boom, the ball would swing and somebody would score. And it was all sort of predicated on Victor Oladipo basically playing point guard, even though he started alongside Gabe Vincent. It was really Depot playing point guard tonight. Awesome game for him. Great last couple of games of the series, and just a great story overall.
Absolutely. You could see an emotional Oladipo talking about the last couple of seasons, the post-game presser tonight, just still referencing everything that you've reported on that we've known for some time. You know, it's been a difficult 2.5 years where he could have given up and he chose not to, and he just chose to stick it out. And he's so grateful. I think he's just happy to be out there in a situation like this in the playoffs. This is such a great story. And I think it really, we've seen from him over the last 2 games that he can still be able to make an impact. Like from out of the rotation just a week or 2 ago to being an immensely impactful player over the course of 2 games. I didn't expect that. I really didn't. I think a lot of fans were optimistic. Well, I mean, a lot of fans said, "Oh, unleash Oladipo. They unleash Oladipo. He'll be the game changer." It's like, yeah, he hasn't really shown that. And offensively, he didn't show that even in game 4. He did it defensively. Tonight, he did it offensively. 8 of 16 from the floor, hitting the 3-point shot, looking comfortable out there with no Jimmy in the lineup, I should say. I think that's something to monitor as well. But he can go in there on occasional moments there, have an impact. I think he's going to be a part of the rotation moving forward. I'm not sure to what extent. I'm not sure how many minutes he's going to get. We know that Spoelstra, it has an immense level of respect for him, something he referenced in today's press conference as well. And I don't think he wants to just trot him out there for a couple of garbage time minutes or something like that. But as an impactful player, you can throw him out. Let's say they take on Philadelphia, right? Let's say Tyrese Maxey goes off for a bit. You can't throw Oladipo out there to put the young player into a torture chamber of his own and keep him from going off the way he has against Miami in the past. I certainly think it's a possibility.
This is a really good conversation to have. Should we just take our ad break here and then continue? Like, we could just do the credit cookies and everything and the Oladipo conversation in the next segment, because there's a lot to glean. I probably should have just saved Oladipo for last on the credit cookies, because there's a lot to get into. Because like you said, a lot of Heat fans were optimistic about Victor Oladipo, unleash him. But everything about Victor Oladipo was the fact that he could be the X factor for the Miami Heat. He's looking like that right now.
Yeah. My cat certainly seems to think so. So anyway, yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit more about Oladipo and his possible role in the next segment. But before we do that, and I know that we're segueing from cookies into something else here, but if you're looking to improve your eating habits, if you're looking for a snack that you can indulge in, yes, I know you'd like something too. They don't have anything in your flavor, unfortunately, but you can get a mixed box.
Salmon?
No, they don't. They don't, unfortunately. But they do have lots of great flavors. All of them soft, easy to chew, 100% covered in chocolate. They're just Built Bars are such a great snack. They help power you through your day. If you're trying to get something for your workout or to get through in between meetings, if you have to skip a meal, which I don't recommend, but if you have to on occasion, then Built Bars are the choice for you. Again, you're not sacrificing any of the taste. It's like indulging in a candy bar without the bad stuff that comes with a candy bar, and all the good stuff that you're looking for in a protein bar. So many delicious flavors to choose from. Get a mixed box with all of your favorites. Go to built.com right now and use the promo code LOCK15. You get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 if you want 15% off. No salmon flavor, unfortunately, but get yours only at built.com. Just a reminder, you can always reach us at email via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter. Love the feedback that we're getting on YouTube. So many great suggestions for the small ball lineup. I think there's a player intrinsic to that small ball lineup who's probably going to be getting some more credit cookies later on in the segment. But before our break, we were talking about Victor Oladipo and his potential impact in the next series. And that's not to say that, Gabe has been a Sixers killer so far this season. I think it's something to consider. He'll certainly get some playing time there. Again, I'm assuming that it's going to be Philadelphia. I shouldn't. Joel Embiid has been hindered, something that we should talk about again, or we will be talking about eventually if the Heat wind up taking on Philadelphia. We'll be looking at that as a potential playoff series in a preview. Embiid, a little timid in Game 5 against Toronto. He said himself that every time he was catching the ball, he wasn't reacting right away. He wasn't moving quickly, etc. But you know what? We'll put a pin in that. As far as the role that Oladipo plays, I see him being a part of the rotation. I really do.
I think he has to be. I think he has to be.
Yeah, you can't. You've opened up Pandora's box now, and you've seen something great in it. You've seen something fantastic in what Victor Oladipo provides, and you can't just show this because now you can't dismiss it the way you did. Like shout out to Tim Reynolds doing some of the press conference when he was asking Spo about it, like the 40-point. No, who did he asked?
It was Bam.
Yeah, he asked Bam about that 40-point game. And Bam was like, hey, dude, you can't just go out there and score 40 points. But that's kind of the feeling that a lot of us had.
A lot of people dismissed it because it was like the B team versus the B team. But I guess I had never really thought it's like, yeah, he was off for 2.5 years and he still scored 40 points against other NBA players. It wasn't like the Orlando Magic were running like the Oklahoma City team out there, which are not NBA players. And so, yeah, I think we're at the point. This was the Victor Oladipo that people thought was potentially in there somewhere and could be unlocked by the time the playoffs rolled around. And I think the Victor Oladipo thing just took so long, right? The Heat thought he was going to be available closer to the All-Star break versus where he ultimately was available. And so we never really got the ramp-up period. We never really got that long tail opportunity for him to kind of get into playing shape. And then all of a sudden, out of necessity in the playoffs, they need him. He comes in. He looks great. And maybe credit to the fact that they've been practicing more and he's getting more run and all that stuff. I think there's a lot going into this. He was crediting his teammates. Jimmy Butler in particular went out of his way to thank Jimmy Butler, which I think is shade at Skip Bayless and all this stuff, but whatever. He looks fresh. He looks like he's in really great form. And this is the version of Victor Oladipo that the Heat thought they could get and didn't make a big swing at the deadline because they thought this Oladipo might be available to them in the postseason. This is the X factor. He is probably the biggest X factor right now that the Brooklyn Nets are not on it, and we're not talking about Ben Simmons anymore, thank God. He's the biggest X factor in the Eastern Conference, right? Like, we know what everybody else is in the East. Victor Oladipo is the biggest swing guy because if he is what we just saw over 2 games, what was that stat again? Plus 35 in 59 minutes over 2 games. If he's that, he's a guy who can do a ton of stuff defensively, hold his own, disrupt passing lanes, all that stuff. Offensively, he's an off-the-dribble threat. He's driving, he's kicking, he's a good playmaker. He was the guy that finally made the first 3 for the Heat tonight after they missed their first 8. It was Victor Oladipo who broke the game open for them. He's energetic. His teammates love him. There's just something about his story that gets guys just amped up, it seems like. This is a really big deal. This is a really big deal if this is the Victor Oladipo that the Heat are getting.
Yeah, and I like that point about, how we know what the other teams are. Like, all season long, let's say from the Milwaukee side of things, Brook Lopez is going to come back. He adds another dimension, et cetera. Okay, well, he's been back and they've been what they've been.
It's fine.
And Philadelphia, are you going to get a suddenly unlocked version of James Harden? Well, we've seen him in bits and spurts, not necessarily consistently enough. There's still always that potential. But, I mean, look, he's already been on their roster. He's either going to show up or he's not. Right. And right now, a lot of people are banking on him not showing up. Toronto, everybody else in the playoffs right now, there's no other player that's going to go in there and magically appear and add something of this incredible value to a team that's already really good and really well established like Miami. Oladipo is the only player who really does that. You're right about him being the X factor and the biggest X factor that you could possibly expect from the Miami side of things. He's provided real value out there. And I'm glad that you brought it up because, yes, the way his teammates respond to him, his defense has been great, incredible effort, diving on the floor for loose balls, poking the ball away from ball handlers, etc. He's just a very good player at this point in time. And I don't think anybody really expected it to be, for him to be this good at this point in the midst of a playoff.
Yeah. And I'll temper expectations just a little bit here.
No, not tonight. No, not tonight. No tempering.
No. Tonight it's
Oladipo
He did kind of miss a dunk late in the game. Like he didn't quite
lob,
get on the lob. He didn't quite get the vertical that I thought he was going to get. He looked a little disappointed after that. So it'll just be something to monitor if he's playing every single night, every other night, basically. If he's as fresh, right? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he won't be. I'm just saying it's something to monitor. I'm sure that he and their training staff is monitoring it as well. As far as I think that we've talked about Spo's like default 9, right? His fault, like the fallback 9 that he goes to. I think Oladipo has put himself into that. It won't be so kind of break glass in case of emergency the way it was against Atlanta. I think Oladipo's playing well enough that he's sort of earned that. I mean, he was named a starter tonight. I think that's very telling, right? And Eric Spoelstra kind of saying it was the best way to sort of keep the integrity of the rotation
We've seen that
in place.
For Spo in the past, right?
But Caleb Martin has not had a great playoffs so far. Duncan Robinson has not had a great playoff so far outside of game 1 of the Hawks series. I wonder if when Kyle Lowry comes back and you move Gabe Vincent back to the bench, I think Gabe's been awesome, but you could, it wouldn't shock me if that was like, okay, Gabe was specifically great to deal with Trae Young. We'll see if they need that kind of disruptor in other series, or if they need somebody that's a little bit more dynamic off the dribble. I don't know. I'm just saying, it wouldn't shock me if Oladipo ended up taking one of or Dwayne Dedman's spot potentially. Could be one that's up for grabs if PJ Tucker is really going to be backup 5 the way he was tonight. Dedman only 2 minutes of game time today. So, you could just keep going small and give Oladipo Dedman's minutes, right? That's certainly a possibility. So, just something to watch. Any other things on Oladipo before I hand out the rest of the credit cookies?
No, I think we've talked about him. I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit further in our upcoming playoff preview.
I don't know how many cookies I have left. Strus is getting some. He had 10 points in 67 seconds tonight. That was crazy. In the series, he scored the second most points in the series. He had 70. Jimmy Butler had 122, almost doubled him, but and didn't even play tonight. But yeah, Strus was awesome all series long, not just tonight. Kyle Lowry, Gabe Vincent, cookies to them too. Gabe Vincent setting the tone on Trae Young early in the series, right? Like Trae Young knew, I'm not getting anything on this defense, and it was a lot of that was because Gabe Vincent was picking him up 94 feet. Kyle Lowry, not the best like just box score stuff, David, but like the second highest plus minus in the series of anybody on the Heat. He was awesome, instrumental in getting Miami's like setting the table for their offense and all that stuff. And then PJ Tucker is just unbelievable all series. This is why you signed PJ Tucker, was because of what you got from him this series. Awesome defensively, a huge reason. You could argue he's even better than Bam defensively in this series, right?
Bam did. Bam made the case for him in his post-game presser. He said, what makes this defense? Okay, guys, go pull it up.
He's the lifeline of our defense. He doesn't get as much credit as he should, in my opinion. The Heat outscored the Hawks by a team high 71 points when PJ Tucker was on the floor in this series. The Heat outscored the Hawks by 71 points over the course of this series when PJ Tucker was playing. That's even better than the Oladipo stuff. That's crazy, David. That's crazy.
Bucks fans convincing themselves, PJ's washed.
They miss him now, don't they?
Impact. Yeah, they could sure use somebody like that. And look, I'll be honest with you. He's been better this year than he was last year with Milwaukee. I mean, he had his moments here and there, but nothing as consistent, as good. Like, he's been a real factor offensively. He's been really good defensively. Something about this team consistently has been able to bring out something about him, something to another level that we haven't seen in quite some time from him.
Spo threw some shade a little bit, like kind of subtweeted the Milwaukee Bucks. It was maybe after the last game. You know what I'm talking about? Where he goes, he was asked about PJ, and he goes, so many teams, so many people just think he's a corner 3 guy and a defensive specialist, but we saw more in his game. And I was like, that's literally what the Milwaukee Bucks are the team in practice that draw like squares on their practice court and say, stand here unless you're Giannis, right? Or Chris Middleton. And PJ Tucker was planted directly in that square in the corner, and they said, don't move from this spot ever out on offense. And the Heat were just like, actually, no, he could do all these other things. And he's been awesome. Like, offensively, awesome. Taking up, he's been their best post-up player in this series, or he was. And then obviously all the things that we talked about, and Bam talked about defensively.
Yeah. Just one last point I want to make. Like, I've made it consistently. Like, Miami's versatility showing yet again in Game 5. Like, every win of this series has been unique. shows Miami's depth, shows how Miami has these multiple players who can step up. And I think you kind of got that feeling. Maybe I was seeking a little confirmation, or maybe I just read something into it, but players by and large were talking about the fact that this team's depth just continues to be just a source of great impact and positivity, because all of a sudden you can go to any one player and you never know who's going to step up over the course of one game and who could tilt the series. Like, we're talking about Duncan Robinson, like he's virtually unplayable. He was a superstar in game one, and there's a potential he could be that on an upcoming series as well. So we can't discount any one player. Everybody's going to get their chance. And this is what makes this team extra special. Not only that they have this depth and this versatility, but that they're all kind of very supportive of one another too. This is a vibe very reminiscent of what I saw when I was covering the team in 2020 during the Orlando bubble. Just seeing them interact with one another. They're also supportive of one another, of their ability to be able to make a positive impact, because tonight might be your night, bro. Next night it might be me or somebody else, but it's all about winning, and we're all in this together, and that's what makes this team so good. And that's why they were able to dispose of perhaps a more talented player in Trae Young and a more talented team in Atlanta. But
I think that's a really, really good point that you make. And this game didn't feel a little bit like a game from December almost. I mean, there's obviously the playoff intensity and the atmosphere there, but like no Jimmy, no Kyle, and that adversity, those sort of trials and tribulations, if you will, that you had to go through, Bam Adebayo missing 6 or 7 weeks, Jimmy Butler missing 24 games or whatever it was, Kyle Lowry missing a bunch of games. Like, I don't know that the Heat win this game.
Right. If they had
not done that before, right? There was a confidence about this team. They said, we didn't really talk about it. We knew Jimmy wasn't going to be available, and obviously Kyle wasn't going to be available in walkthrough this morning, and that was it. And they just went into this game, and this is a team that's really confident in the pieces that they have. And we talked about it earlier this week. They have so many different kinds of options. It was a great point that you make with Duncan Robinson. Like, you didn't even really need him this series outside of game one. You're going to need him against Philadelphia or Toronto, potentially Milwaukee or Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, you still keep playing Duncan Robinson because he can win you a single game just with his 3-point shooting, and you could steal a game against those superior teams to the Hawks. I mean, like, those really good teams. That really matters, right? And you just have so many different guys that you can go to. This is such a well-rounded, complete team. No, they don't have the star power that those other teams do, but they have a lot of other things that are going for them, and that stuff was on display in this Hawks series.
They've been forged by the fire. Or what else could you expect by a team called the Miami Heat? But thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We'll continue to bring you great coverage throughout Miami's playoffs. The Bally Sports might be done. Eric Reed and John Crotty are off the call.
Great.
But Locked On Heat will always be there to give you the best coverage available. So make sure you subscribe to get the best coverage available. Always make sure you can make your second listen Locked On NBA, Locked On Experts, covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's always free and available wherever you get podcasts. I'm David Ramil, signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap up the series, B. We're done. Goodbye, Atlanta.